General Protocol Spaces, banking on freedom.
Welcome to General Bull 9 of N. Who knows how long this farce will go on, but here it goes. So today we have our usual convicts imaginary username, Jonathan Silverblood, and myself here from General Protocols, and joining us, Jim Tendo, the famous developer. So Jim, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And I was saying earlier to you in DM, right? I was like, hey, I don't want to dox any super secret projects. So could you give us a quick introduction of what you do and what you have worked on and what you're working on these days?
Yeah. So I'll go back to like the beginning, I guess. The first like BCH project I worked on was actually called bounty.cash, and it was kind of not like Flipstarter. It was more of like a put items up and then offer like a set amount. So let's say as an example, I think one of the ones that I actually did was we didn't have like a BCH logo as a SVG file at that point. So I put up like a $5 bounty or something. Yeah, super simple. So I put up like
this is like bounty. BCH ecosystem, right? It's like, wait, there's no marketing department. All right, let's do this.
No, yeah. So it was really like, funnily enough, someone did like come along and fulfill that bounty. But the funny thing is, with an SVG, it's meant to be like a vector file, right? So what this guy did was basically take the image and just embed it in the SVG. So it's still, pixelized. He's just basically wrapped it in an SVG file format, and that was it. So yeah, that was probably the very first project I ever built. It was actually, in my opinion, quite cool. There were a lot of problems with it and a lot of things that I noticed that were lacking in the ecosystem generally. So that actually inspired me, come to think of it, to put in a merge request for Electron Cash. And the intent of that merge request was to just add a support for a query parameter, which was op return. Because one of the problems that I was having there was, how do I actually identify which user is paying? There's ways to do it, obviously, but they're a little bit convoluted and messy. To be honest with you, the op return approach was also quite bad for that particular use case, just because not all wallets support it, which means you'd send money, but then not know, what that money was actually sent for. So people essentially lost their funds, couldn't prove that that actually fulfilled a bounty. But conceptually, I think it was cool. It looked nice. What happened eventually was I forgot to renew the domain, and someone else bought it straight away. So
away.
That's the death of that project. But
kids, that's why we don't depend on TLDs.
No, I'll jump into that later because I've got like some ideas around that. But yeah, essentially, like forgetting to renew a domain is such an easy thing to do. And at that point, I was trying to be super anonymous as well, so using like this email inbox with Namecheap that I never check, and yeah, it completely backfired on me. So I try not to be as paranoid nowadays. But yeah. So that was probably the very first one. After that, because I realized that basically it was such a pain in the ass just to receive payments, I started working on a project that I called CashPay Server. So CashPay Server is BIP70 / JSON Payment Protocol backend, I guess. But the idea is it's like a microservice, so that any other service that wants to accept BIP70 or support BIP70 and JSON Payment Protocol can just use that. And it came with like a corresponding JavaScript library as well. To be honest, that project's kind of fallen off the wagon a little bit. There were things that I was unhappy about with it. It does still work. It's good for testing, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that people use it, in a production setting. There's no real assurance towards like reliability of that server. it's running on. After that, I built a project just to kind of demo Cache server, and this one's kind of cool. I think it's called Cache Tags. So the idea of that is basically you can print out like a QR code, and let's say like one of the problems with Bitcoin Cash QR code at the moment is you have to set the amount in Bitcoin Cash. So the idea of Cache Tags is to be able to like print out a QR code and attach a fiat amount to it. So let's say like 5 USD, and doesn't really matter when you end up scanning it. It'll basically do some like not wizardry, but like a little bit of kind of magic and work out what 5 USD would actually be in Bitcoin Cash. So that leveraged CashPay server to actually do that.
That was using CashPay server. So
yeah.
I've actually used this at least once back when we were in Australia for a thing that Bitcoin Cash City was doing in Townsville. They had their ice cream, like they had this event and they were just having fun, and it was a social event, and as part of it they had this new ice cream that was like had some kind of branding for Bitcoin Cash on it, and this ice cream shop had the new flavor out, and they had a little QR code. And the beautiful thing about this, I remember, was nobody understands the magic that was going on. It was extremely simple from the user perspective. You open up your wallet, you scan it, and it shows you, oh, you're going to spend $5 Australian on this ice cream. And you're like, yeah. And you hit send, and that's it. And you have no idea that, wait, how did that work? How did it know that what $5 of BCH is right now at the current exchange rate or whatever? Like, you didn't have to worry about that. You just scanned it and it worked. I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, conceptually, I think it's cool. I think one of the biggest problems was BIP70 and JSON payment protocol support has been historically pretty poor in wallets. Like even with BIP70, one of the issues or things that makes it a bit confusing is the wallet itself actually decides which payment protocol it wants to use. So you've just got like a Bitcoin Cash URL with an R equals question mark. R refers to like the URL that it should pull an invoice from. But essentially the problem there is that the wallet chooses whether it's going to talk using BIP70 or using JSON payment protocol. So if you're trying to create, which created like a lot of compatibility issues, I guess. So that's actually why instead of like integrating BIP70 directly into that Cache Tags project, I did build that CashPay server, just because essentially if you're going to try and accept either BIP70 or JSON payment protocol, you've kind of got to support both to actually maximize like wallet compatibility. So yeah, that was look, cool project, like cool proof of concept. Never really kind of intended it to be used properly. I was just more trying to demonstrate the capability of BIP70 and JSON payment protocol. But yeah, it is quite cool.
That's always the intent behind something that gets adopted worldwide, right? It's like, no, this was totally not meant to be. Yeah, okay, everybody uses it.
Yeah. Oh, look, no one really uses it. I think just the ice cream shop, and I think there's another company up in Townsville that uses it for coffee or something. But it's like
the coffee company, I think.
Yeah, it's not even like a proper coffee company. I think it's just like internally, if you make a coffee or you grab a can of Coke or something like that, the QR code slapped on the fridge, and it's like, oh, if you're grabbing a beer, just scan and pay $1 or whatever it is.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. The other cool thing in that application was I was kind of thinking it might be useful for market stalls and that kind of thing. So as part of like the proof of concept, I even put like a live monitoring thing on it where let's say you're at a bar or something like that. There's a bunch of drinks that you can select. So you scan the QR code, you pay for it, you get a technically like a memo that returns. So you're basically just a number, like your order number is number 16. And, it goes live to the bar staff. They can then pour the drink, call out, hey, got a drink for number 16. And serve the person their drink. So cool proof of concept, but haven't really worked on it. Haven't really worked on a CashPay server directly either. The other project is probably scan-to-pay.cash. And again, another more so proof of concept. But what that is, it's like a payment terminal, essentially. So up in Townsville, one of the things that I noticed was, even though a lot of places said they would accept Bitcoin Cash, one of the problems is that they didn't have the terminals actually operating. Like, let's say, it'd been a month since I'd last received a Bitcoin Cash payment. So you'd walk in, say, hey, I'd like to pay in Bitcoin Cash, and either the terminal wasn't charged, wasn't connected to the Wi-Fi, or the staff had no idea how to actually use the Bitcoin Cash register app. So this one is kind of tricky to explain, but the idea is to get rid of like a dedicated terminal entirely. There's 2 QR codes. One of the QR codes is behind the counter facing the staff, and the other QR code is facing the customer. So the flow here would be that the staff member basically, after calculating how much the person has to pay, would scan the QR code on their side of the desk or counter and input whatever the amount that's due is. I'll take a step back. When they scan the QR code, it doesn't open a Bitcoin Cash application or any application on their phone. What it opens is a web browser that basically presents like a point of sale terminal. So it's probably an important bit that I skipped. So they don't have to install anything on their phone. Any staff member, as long as they've got a phone, they've got a QR code scanner, can basically scan that QR code on their side of the counter and be able to accept BCH payments. So what would then happen? Let's say they scan it, opens their web browser to the point of sale app. They put in $10. They would then instruct the customer to scan the QR code on their side of the counter. And when they do, basically it's a CashPay server flow again. It just will open that customer's wallet and display the amount. They click send, and then the person, the staff member on their side of the counter will be able to see on their phone that the payment's gone through. So to me, it kind of solves that problem of needing a dedicated like terminal device to accept Bitcoin Cash. I'm hoping that explanation made partial sense. If anyone wants to like try it out, it's scan-to-pay.cash.
Yeah, no, I'm actually linking it in the thread. This is fantastic. Cool. Yeah. Twitter is weird. Like apparently I'm not going to explain it. It's weird. So yeah, I'm going to post that in the thread. I already looked it up and got all the right URL and everything. And I've used this before, actually. I've used the scan to pay and I love it because it's like another experiment and approach in point of sale. And it kind of pushes. The beautiful thing about it, from my perspective, you already described it, but I'll just say it in my own words, is that it pushes the line of, how does a business run? What does payments mean? It kind of pushes that line a little bit over to the staff side or to the, it pushes it down a layer, right? Where, okay, like anybody's device is fine. If every employee has their personal phone that they want to use, that's okay. Or if every employee has like a business phone that they're using, a device, a smart device that they're using to deal with sales and so forth, they can do that. And there doesn't have to be a central point of sale, which is a bit of an anachronism, right? That there has to be a person at the exit to the store or whatever that's taking payments. Why does that have to be? Why can't you do the payments at the table directly? So yeah, I love it, and it works. I've used it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other cool kind of prospects I had for it as well is, from an adoption point of view. I mean, ultimately they're just QR codes, on a sheet of paper. So theoretically, someone could print out just 100 of those QR codes and post them to businesses or hand them out to businesses. And it's really quite easy to get up and running in the sense that there's no real setup there except for, I think, putting in your receiving address. And that's basically it. So the first time, you ever scan the counter QR code, that's where you put in the receiving address that you want the money to go to. And yeah, after that, it's frozen. You can't possibly change it for security reasons, obviously. You don't want a malicious staff member basically changing that address to their own address and,
for sure,
company money. Yeah.
But that's one of those things where it's like, you can't, I don't know how to say this. Crypto doesn't solve human trust, right?
No,
there's always going to be a point where, okay, the money network ends and human trust begins. And if we can push that out to the edges, that's, I think, the point of it. But there's always going to be a point where it's like, okay, this is where we set the thing up. And there's human trust involved.
Yeah. Like one of the interesting things is, a malicious employee could just replace the QR codes with their own QR codes, right?
And then the employer's like, okay, you're going to jail. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it would happen, but my brother actually made a pretty simple suggestion in regards to that. It's like, just have a space for a signature underneath the QR codes, and then the boss can put his signature in. It becomes still not perfect, but it's a little bit more obvious if someone's, employees come along and switch the QR codes. But you're right.
If you have a native wallet, then you could have both of them and make sure that the company's wallet is also signing every transaction if you wanted to. So
I think an interesting comparison could be between, whether it is easier for the employee to steal and get away with it with this setup compared to a, cash setup. Like which one is easier? That could be an interesting comparison. Like, if we can get on par with cash, then we're good, right? So.
Yeah. Oh, so I'm in Australia, and we have I don't know what you would call it, like tap to pay kind of thing. So you just tap your card on the terminal, and that's incredibly convenient. Like, I don't know if we're really going to be able to get past that, but I will say, there's a big use cash movement here in Australia at the minute, and cash is cumbersome, and I've noticed a lot of young people, really can't do the math in their head anymore, right? Like, you go to pay cash, and the young people really just can't cope with it. So from that point of view, it's we are branded as Bitcoin Cash, and it really is a good cash alternative, in my opinion. Probably a lot easier for not just the staff, but the customer as well. I mean, you don't have to have pre-change, rustling around in your pocket. So yeah, I still think conceptually it's a really kind of good idea. The implementation itself will work in most cases, but again, some wallets don't support BIP70 or JSON payment protocol, and at that point, it can become a little bit tricky. There is actually a BIP21 fallback, where if the customer's wallet doesn't support BIP70 or JSON payment protocol, the staff member behind the counter can just show them, click a "it's not working" button, and it'll show a QR code that the customer can scan. It just uses a BIP21 URL.
I think this is one of those things that's beautiful about the permissionless network, where everybody's incentivized to grow the usage of a thing, even though they aren't the specific owner of the thing, because we all believe in it and we think it's valuable, and it's going to make life better for ourselves as well, right? There's self-interest as well, but that you developing this is there's like a decentralized kind of development process going on, right? Where you develop these experiments, and some of them work well and some of them don't. And in a centralized, common, standard company setup, like most cryptos are, as a matter of fact, most of them are actually companies running a network. All these experiments wouldn't happen because, you just decide one thing to do, and that's the thing that we try. But here we get all kinds of experiments and see what works. I love it. I love to see all the experiments you come up with, Jim.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, no, I agree with you entirely. It's just kind of throw shit against the wall and see what sticks.
Well, now to be fair to people who are listening, when Jim throws shit at the wall, it's very high quality shit. So there's a little bit of a qualification there.
Yeah, but yeah. Either way, like I'd like to see that idea be adopted in future. I think wallets are getting a lot better. Like Flowey recently implemented support for Flowey Pay, recently implemented support for BIP70, and new features like Wallet Connect and that kind of thing that I think a lot of wallets will end up adopting as well. So yeah, it's cool stuff.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna move on to a different project, but yeah.
Nice. Yeah, go ahead. This is all intro, right? Like I told you guys that Jim is a very accomplished guy, so just the intro really is like a list of accomplishments here. Yeah, let's go for the next one.
Next one is so Jonathan Silverblood created a protocol called Cache ID, which is really neat. So it's basically an authentication protocol. Instead of username and password or email and password, you basically just sign in using your wallet. So what I created was just a front end for it called cacheid.app. And it also came with like a OIDC gateway. Not sure if people are familiar with OIDC, but basically it's like, when you go to a website and it's, it says log in with Google, log in with Facebook, log in with Twitter, or whatever. Usually that will be using what's called OIDC. And it's a standardized protocol. And, the idea is you don't have to, create something bespoke to support one of these social networks or authority providers, whatever. OIDC is a standard, and you can usually just plug it into whatever. So to give an example of where that's currently used, it's used in bitcoincashresearch.org. So if you go to that website, you can actually log in using Cache ID. I'm hoping it still works. I haven't tested it for a while. And yeah, that's actually using the OIDC gateway. So to integrate it into bitcoincashresearch.org, it was basically just a few lines of configuration, and that's it. That was built a while ago. I shamefully almost lost the domain for that one as well. I think I scraped in 2 days before the expiration date or something. So yeah, moving away from TLDs is something that I'm really hoping we can do in future. But I do keep screwing up.
It's on the roadmap.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So in terms of what I'm currently working on, the biggest one is probably Wallet Connect kind of stuff. So this one's kind of steep, and I always have a really, really, really difficult time kind of explaining it. But to give a little bit of background, because of my work on BIP70 and JSON Payment Protocol, the BCH Guru dev account reached out to me, and they wanted to be able to use Wallet Connect with the BCH Guru platform. So Pat's done an excellent job writing a Wallet Connect implementation, but unfortunately we just couldn't really work out a way to get these particular contracts working with BCH Guru. With Wallet Connect. So been putting a lot of work into this and kind of trying to find a really nice, versatile and flexible way, and secure as well, actually, secure way of supporting something like Wallet Connect. And fundamentally, I'm kind of treating this as two different pieces. So you've got Wallet Connect itself, which I'm basically treating like a transport. So it's more like the postman that delivers your mail. And then we've got what I'm at the moment calling Cash RPC, and that's the protocol. So Cash RPC is more like the package itself, and Wallet Connect is more like the postman that's, delivering that package, carrying it back and forth between client and server, or client and wallet, I should say, or DApp and wallet is probably the better term. So with that, that's basically using libOff almost entirely on the Cash RPC side. And it's been really, really, really tricky. Like you'll kind of make a lot of progress and then realize your approach just isn't versatile, or there's a security hole in it or something like that. But it is using libOff templates, and I'm building a tool to go along with it, which basically takes multiple cash script contracts and will compile them into a libOff template. And yeah,
does that overlap with Pat's recent Flipstarter? The thing where
a little bit. So when Pat builds that, I think the benefit from like the tool that I'm building is I should be able to integrate that debugging information a little bit better into what I'm building, essentially. So there is a little bit of overlap. For me right now, it's not absolutely crucial. I do have like after banging my head against the desk for hours and small little bugs trying to actually debug contracts in practice, I did end up building some debugging tools into Cash RPC itself, so I can actually if the transaction fails, I can see the stack trace and that kind of thing. But what Pat's building will make that a lot nicer in the sense that I can actually see. You mentioned earlier today that he's going to create like a source map file.
Yeah, all the way back to the source symbols.
Yeah,
that'd be fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah, that'll be awesome. Like at the moment, it's kind of oh shit, it failed on verify over here.
Yeah, right. And you're like, what up verify is that?
Yeah, which one? I've got lots of them. So yeah, what Pat's building will actually be great for that. My implementation from a debugging point of view is very rudimentary at the minute. Should probably kind of talk about what the benefit or what benefits it kind of has.
Let me rewind a second, because I want to give a little context to the audience about how incredibly important this thing that Jim is talking about is. So, but let me verify first, Jim. So several years ago, I remember in I think Electron Cash Telegram somewhere, I said the main blocker to a truly great user experience on Bitcoin Cash is a payment protocol. And it was very close to that. And that's not a quote, but it was very close to that. And the response to that was like, that's dumb. Basically, like, what the fuck are you talking about? But do you think that's a true statement, that what you're talking about here, the kind of protocol of how apps and wallets talk to each other, or how apps and users talk to each other, do you think that is a true statement, that that's the blocker of a really good user experience?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I mean, that was my blocker initially with Bounty.cash as well, right? Yeah, it's a crucial thing. And I think, the other problem is kind of we've ended up with divergent standards over the years. And, we kind of go for this bespoke approach because we don't really have standards to do this kind of stuff. And it really not only complicates it from like a user point of view, also really kind of complicates it from a development point of view as well. It's really quite difficult for developers to just kind of, you know, jump in and get stuff running quickly. It's like, you know, we have to essentially, currently, if we're building like a app like BCH Bull, we basically have to build a wallet into that application, and that's not just tricky, it's scary.
It's scary. It's a huge job, and it's a huge responsibility, and it's a, like you said, it's a scary responsibility that not because of intelligence or anything like that, but it's one of those things that as a developer, you don't want to be responsible for these very heavy decisions. It's just like the old rule of, you know, don't roll your own crypto. It's the same thing, right? Like, don't roll your own wallet.
Yeah.
Except you have to.
You have to.
As it stands, right? You have to roll your own wallet.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, establishing like good standards for this kind of stuff, you know, will really, really help us. It's like, gonna be immensely helpful. I mean, there are things you have to be really cautious about, though. Like security is a big one. You know, we kind of already see that with like Ethereum and MetaMask. You know, it's most users aren't really that tech savvy. Most of them don't probably even really understand how cryptocurrency works at all. To them, it's just money. And, you know, if you go to a scam website, you're using Ethereum or MetaMask or something like that, you kind of have to trust that the site's not going to screw you over. You know, most users just aren't really going to be able to, you know, audit or understand most of the information that's being presented to them when they're prompted by MetaMask or something like that. So that's been really kind of tricky in trying to design this Cash RPC thing, is try to work out, you know, how we can actually make it not perfectly secure. I don't think we're ever going to get perfect security, but make it relatively secure. And one of the benefits of using the libauth templates is that we can actually hash them, right? So we can define in the template itself, like these are the actions that this supports, right? These are essentially the transaction shapes or the transaction templates. And we can do a SHA-256 hash, and people can actually audit those templates, and they can be added to like a trusted list, you know, a wallet that's designed for absolute newbies that know nothing about crypto. Might only whitelist like a pay to public key hash template, whereas, you know, a more advanced wallet or a wallet that has the option to be an advanced user wallet might have, you know, might look up in a separate database to see, hey, has this particular template or this hash been marked as trusted by someone that we trust? So it still introduces trust into the system, but you know, it's a lot better than basically trying to just trust the domain itself or the TLD, you know, which could be hacked. Lots of malicious stuff.
Or the loser owner of the domain could
like,
let, you know, ownership of it expire, and then
exactly. So like,
to restate from before, right? It's that there's no such thing as removing trust entirely from humanity. That's stupid. That kills the humanity. The point of this whole process is like pushing all the trust out to the edges as much as possible, not depending on central points of failure as much as possible. And this pushes what you're talking about, pushes that trust out to the edges of, okay, me and my wallet versus, you know, okay, I just trust this app to do the right thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, probably the most important thing there is, you know, constraining the outputs from a technical point of view. You know, you don't want a template that can just pay money to any address whatsoever, kind of thing. And, you know, we can actually put those constraints in the templates. As is in most cases, there might be a few kind of contracts that are difficult to do that with the current design that I've got. But in general, that's the idea, you know, being able to constrain where essentially when you sign into a website using Wallet Connect, the idea is you're showing whether the template that this site is basically using is trusted or not, whether your wallet trusts it. And, if it's trusted, the assumption is that, someone reputable has audited it and basically signed the hash and said, yeah, I've looked at this template. It looks fine. It's not doing anything malicious. I'll, sign for it. And then after that, the user can see in their wallet whether it's a trusted template. But yeah, it does allow us to, put constraints in the outputs. What it also, the protocol that I'm working on also does is allows you to optionally provide inputs, but they're not actually required. So one of the issues that I had when initially working with the Wallet Connect stuff was I found it really, really tricky to actually construct proper change outputs. Particularly when tokens are involved, it actually becomes really easy to make a mistake and burn your tokens. So yeah, one of the things that this does is basically does UTXO selection for you. It's almost like a mix between BIP70 and JSON payment protocol in the sense that you just define the required transaction shape, I guess you could call it. Like this input is definitely required. These outputs are definitely required. And then the Cash RPC protocol itself will basically select appropriate UTXOs from your wallet for you. And that's good because it does make it really simple for, I wouldn't say really simple, but a lot more simpler for developers to implement it. And to also help wallets implement it, I am working on a library as well. So a JavaScript or TypeScript library to go with it. And I've been playing around with Cachenize and implementing it into that. It's pretty easy. Logical side of it's probably only about 100 lines of code, and the rest of it's basically in presenting UI to the user. But that's kind of my aim with that, is to make it one, versatile, two, secure, and three, really, really easy for both developers that are creating a DApp to use, and also for wallets, or I should say JavaScript/TypeScript wallets to actually implement it. So,
man, I want to put a timestamp on this, just like a verbal timestamp, that when people look back in history, this is going to be one of those moments where it's like, okay, this is where one small group of particular people, like in this case, you and Cachenize developers, right? Like Matthew Gilkins, make a few decisions that change the course of history. I don't know. Maybe that sounds silly, but I really think that's the case where.
Yeah, no, that's look. It'll be good. I don't want to oversell it.
I want to oversell it because I think it's true. But yeah, of course you would say that. But I really think that's the case where this is one of those moments where it's like, okay, these people have understood what's happening and what's coming, and they've made a decision to work on a thing that's actually going to give us a new path to go down, right? And I think that new path, I think you totally agree, right? That the new path that you're aiming to go down is very important because it pushes that trust out to the edges.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, there's going to be particularly, so I'm releasing all this, under version 0 because I do want feedback. I want people to experiment with different contracts as well, make sure it all works. So that's why I'm trying to build this tool to go along with it, so that people like BCA can experiment with these contracts, and you don't have to get into the nitty gritty of actual front end development if you don't want to. There's a tool there you can test the contracts. You get some not perfect but decent debug output to work out where things have gone wrong and that kind of thing. But I agree with you 100% in terms of like long term. This is to me such an important thing for for BCH to get something like this, out there. The big limitation I'll call out with what I've got currently is it's not great, not a great design for anything that requires multi-sig. It's some contracts will work, and there might be tricks to kind of make it so you can have multiple parties interact using this Wallet Connect / Cash RPC over Wallet Connect protocol. But I haven't really quite worked out how to make that elegant yet. For any contract between just DApp and service, I think it's pretty flexible. As in, I haven't really found a contract in the wild yet that I can't get it to work with. So from that point,
this is where you define a DApp by the TLD.
Yeah, correct.
Right?
Yeah, I'm talking about a TLD. Yep.
Sorry for the audience, the TLD is a top level domain. We've used that word a lot, but yeah, top level domain. So trusting the DNS, the your domain registrar to respect whatever it is that you as the supposed owner of a domain decide, which is a shaky ground to stand on. But that's kind of the reality of where we are, that those decisions and that trust rests on the trust that your registrar is going to do what you say. But that's where we are actually today, right? That's where the internet is.
That's where the internet is. And, we're trying to, so I'll just mention, it's a kind of a good segue there. So the reason why I'm not just calling this Wallet Connect, I'm calling it Cash RPC over Wallet Connect, is because, like I mentioned earlier, I'm just viewing Wallet Connect as basically a transport to carry messages between, DApp and Wallet. But the intent there is to basically be able to turn it also into just like a BIP70 / JSON payment protocol approach as well. So, it's intended not just to be locked into Wallet Connect. I also want to be able to use it with just HTTPS as well, right? Like I did BIP70, like I did with JSON payment protocol. But probably the more interesting one is, in future, I'd really, really like to be able to use this over libp2p as well. So libp2p, differs from TLD, top-level domain stuff, in the sense that you're not identifying someone by their domain, you're identifying them by their public key. And communication between you and that person, when they're giving you a public key, it's all encrypted. They can't possibly pretend to be anyone except that they are, unless their private key is compromised. But moving to a setup like that eventually would actually be really, really good from a security point of view, and also that point of view of letting a domain lapse and expire and someone taking over it. So I've done played around with libp2p a little bit for other stuff. One of the kind of cool use cases, I think, is actually to be able to run like let's say a Fulcrum node at home on a server with very little configuration, and also even a chain graph instance with very little configuration as well. So libp2p is actually the foundational layer of IPFS. And so it's what IPFS uses under the hood. And being able to use libp2p basically means, we can decentralize a lot of this stuff and make it a lot more censor resistant than it otherwise would be with top level domains. One of the problems with Wallet Connect, or not problem I should say, but one of the things that popped up recently was Wallet Connect were considering banning Russians from being able to use it. And even though that hasn't gone through, I'm pretty sure they've retracted it. It is one of those things that we do probably have to think about in future. Is the government going to, come down on us harder and, attack us or block us, censor us at the domain level? So with libp2p, I think that could solve a lot of our issues there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And to shill a little bit here, right? If you go on BCHBull app.bchbull.com and you use the Konami code up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, you can start using libp2p today to make
I should
any hedge transactions, right?
Yeah, that one, I initially wrote that using libp2p, but there was a problem with the browser implementation at that point. I'm not sure if it's been resolved, but I did actually have to tear libp2p out of that, and it's using a different approach. I can't remember what it was called, but it does use a centralized relay, unfortunately, to do the P2P stuff in BCHBull.
That was using libp2p though, right? Or was it not?
At one point, the very first implementation I wrote of that was using libp2p, but basically at that point it couldn't hole punch. So I was testing it out, locally on my two laptops, and it was working fine. And I'm like, oh, sick! This is awesome. Problem is, it couldn't hole punch through the internet. So on a LAN, it worked perfectly. But as soon as I tried to use it actually over the internet itself, it just couldn't get past the router.
Okay, I retract my shilling, and I resubmit it with 50% weight.
It will happen though. I mean, again, that was the P2P constraint at the time, and I'm pretty sure the P2P has since actually resolved that. It has various hole punching mechanisms, and one of them should be super reliable, called I think it's just called a relay in their setup. But yeah, to get for party A to get to party B, basically both talk to party C briefly to find each other. And
this is another one of those points that a listener might not realize how much weight is going on here, right? To propose to bypass the TLD system is the TLD standard, the top level domain standard, that all trust rests on the top level domain, is, I don't know how to describe how large the scale of that statement is, but it's absolutely huge that you would be able to say, look, I trust this public key because I know who that person is, or I know who that identity is, and I know their reputation. And that reputation doesn't depend on, xyz.com. It just depends on that public key. That's an absolutely enormous sea change in trust and how trust works on the internet. So yeah, that's a very huge point. And I really appreciate that guys like you and also Sahid, right? Sahid Miller also works on these kind of things very heavily.
Yeah. And, I like public keys themselves are pretty inconvenient approach to kind of identify someone. But at the same time, it's like we've got Jonathan's cash account system, right? And, in future, we might find that, instead of having to copy and paste someone's public key, you just identify them by the cash account ID.
Yeah, right? Yeah, right. Which, human readable name also.
Human readable name, yeah. So I think there's a lot of potential in that kind of approach. And like I said, even from an infrastructure point of view, being able to host a chain graph instance at your own home, like people do Bitcoin nodes essentially, or Bitcoin Cash nodes, host them in their house, and you can have fallbacks at that point. It's like, if server A at Joe's house isn't turned on, it's okay, I'll fall back to server B at John's house, kind of thing. And yeah, so that's all kind of theoretical at this point. I haven't really tested how it's all going to work in practice, but that's one of the other directions that I'm trying to kind of move in, is really kind of head towards sensor resistance and decentralization.
I love this. I love that we're actually working on these while other people talk about it. It's and it's not easy, right? Like there's a lot of unsolved, open-ended problems to solve, and there's multiple ways to solve them. And I can't appreciate I don't know how to appreciate. I mean, I don't know how to state strongly enough that I appreciate you working on these things to try to find ways to solve these problems.
To be honest, I'm not really doing the heavy lifting. Like, it's mostly the P2P developers that really do the heavyweight. We're just kind of taking advantage of what they build, which, you know, is the intent from their point of view. They probably want to see people doing cool stuff with libp2p. But yeah.
Okay,
like,
so I need to add libp2p to our General Protocol sponsorship list.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, it's okay. You don't have
seriously.
No, well, they're getting money from. I think I saw on the website at one point they're actually getting sponsored by the WEF. Ironically,
womp womp.
Yeah, it's a very weird relationship because I just can't see how that's beneficial to the WEF. But yeah, whatever. You know, take advantage of it while you can.
We'll have our own fork eventually, probably.
Probably, yeah. Once they realize what they're actually sponsoring, they're like, "Oh, fuck," and yeah, have to pull the rug. But no, it's. I do think we really have to look at, you know, heading in that censor-resistant, decentralized kind of direction, because I mean things are kind of popping off right now. You know, it's Russia today. That people ban. I know that Cuba is not allowed to.
It's not Russia, right? Like, to be clear, it's just people who happen to have IPs that are identified by a geological location that they have no control over, right? It's not the government that we're talking about here.
Oh no, sorry, it's not even it's not the Russian government that's blocking, and it's not the Cuban government that's doing the blocking. It's actually, like, for example, if you're living in Cuba and you try to access, I think even Google.com, Google themselves block you because you're from Cuba.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, the view is, okay, we block everyone from a geological location, and it's like, okay, wait, what? These individuals aren't the government.
Exactly. Yeah, it's you know, yeah, you're punishing a collective population for the actions of a government, essentially. Yeah. So yeah.
All right. Is that the end of the introduction?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Look at that. We spent like quite a long period of time just covering all the stuff that Jim has done. So this goes in line with the introduction that I said, which is Jim has been a prolific developer of libraries, infrastructure, applications that are all supporting this permissionless money network. And I really appreciate that so much. So now we can get on to the show.
I don't know what else to talk about, to be honest. You guys, sorry, I probably should have been a little bit more brief. But yeah.
No, I loved it. I mean, all of those are the details. Seriously, I think this is one of those episodes or recordings or whatever that would be valuable for history, for where people can hear, oh, there was actually specific people who made the difference at this point in time when 99.99% of the people didn't know what was going on, and made the right decisions that actually gave us a path forward. So no, I really appreciate that. I actually have other questions for you, if you don't mind. Could I go on to some other questions?
Absolutely, go for it.
Yeah, so you already covered it to some degree in the explanations that you did about the Wallet Connect standard. But if you step back, could you explain what is it that you see? Because you're kind of on the edge. You're on the boundary of, you know, these bespoke apps and custom development that requires people with high levels of skill and long years of experience to create a good user experience on Bitcoin Cash apps. With you standing there at the edge, like where do you see what do you see are the next necessary steps so that it doesn't require so much experience and so much cost and Yes. Not being so expensive to develop applications that work on a permissionless network. What do you see as the next steps forward on that?
Well, probably
we can get to excellent UX and excellent safety. Not perfect, because there's no such thing, but excellent safety, excellent UX, without having to have so much experience as you have.
I think the Cache RPC over Wallet Connect and over HTTP and hopefully libp2p in future. I think that's a huge one, right? The other thing is, historically we've kind of lacked libraries that have been good for development. We've got some now, but we had Bitbox by Bitcoin.com, which itself was a good, easy to use library, right? But the problem was it was just unreliable. So it was leveraging like a Bitcoin.com server, and that server, often went down. I remember doing some initial testing with Bounty.cash, and there was like a subscribe to address notifications function on it, and a lot of those just never came through. So libraries are probably the big one. We've got LibAuth now, which is excellent. Still a little bit too difficult for probably most developers that are that aren't super familiar with Bitcoin Cash to jump into. Me personally, I'm working on like a LibAuth for Dummies library that kind of looks like Bitbox a little bit from a API point of view. So it really aims to simplify LibAuth and just give developers the common functions that they do want. For example, an address class, right? Where you can basically just create an address and say, I want to convert this to a legacy address. I want to convert this to a cache address. I want to convert this to a cache address that supports tokens and all that kind of thing. Basically, the primitives that you would need for Bitcoin Cash, that's what the intent of this library is to provide.
I'm gonna jump in.
Was that Cache RPC, or was that a different library?
No, this one's tentatively called libcache, but it'll probably change name later.
1 2 1 2. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been listening for a long time. It's really good to keep all the conversation, but I gotta jump in here. So whenever you build that, please, for the love of God, don't call it an address. Make it a LockScript class, because the conversions you're talking about really don't, it's not address to address translation. It's actually address down to LockScript and then back up to an address translation.
It does. So the idea is it is address for now, and I think address is probably more, again, because I am thinking of this from like the developer's perspective, right? Like a normal developer probably doesn't know what a LockScript is, but the idea is, the fundamental primitive there is the LockScript, right? And for example, once you got the address object, the function that you would call to actually use it in practice is 2 LockScript bytes or 2 LockScript hex. But the primitive itself probably really is an address from most users' point of view.
As long as, I think Jonathan's point is, as long as the underlying stuff recognizes that that's a false view, right?
Oh,
that's
yeah. I mean, address is one of those things we have. Like, I agree fundamentally, the correct representation is as a LockScript. But when you get a Bitcoin Cash Q blah 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 blah, technically that is an address.
It's one of those things where the simplicity is difficult. Simplicity is really hard, and people who haven't developed systems or built systems don't understand that to make something easy to use, you're necessarily going to hide a lot of complexity under the hood. Yeah, and I think this is one of those complexities that such a library would need to handle.
This isn't really probably targeted towards advanced developers. Like, it's all taking like an object-oriented approach as well, right? So problem with object-oriented stuff in JavaScript is you can't really tree shake it as well as you could like a functional approach. At the same time, I think the trade-off probably for a lot of developers is worth it. They don't want to have to sometimes you just want to buy the appliance. You don't want to have to buy all the parts and assemble it yourself. You just want the end product itself, and that's it. So that's kind of the intent of this. And I think until mainnet JS by Pat, I don't think we really had, an easy way for developers to jump into Bitcoin Cash. I think a lot of them probably, looked at it and wanted to be able to do certain things, but just couldn't do it easily. So we may have lost a little bit of entrepreneurial, I can't say that word, entrepreneur people that, probably wanted to develop a project using Bitcoin Cash, but just couldn't really find the tools necessary to do so.
Right.
So, yeah. Sorry, I probably diverged from your question a little bit, but I think fundamentally what we need is, libraries, references as well. Like, Jonathan, you put together, I think, documentation.cash. And I did listen to one of the previous podcasts, and it's like, we didn't have a reference like that at one point. But, having those kind of references, those kind of sources, I think really, really helps people as well. Like I use that website almost daily at the minute.
Can I ask a harder extension to the question? So, because those things that you're saying are kind of the stuff that we face today, but going forward from the place that you are with Cash RPC, the next, from my perspective, the next really hard step is moving all the state management of, what is my wallet? What is mine? What am I involved in from a blockchain, like happens on EVM systems, where everything's stored on the blockchain and it's a huge stateful global mess. In moving that state to the user's side, what's the next steps on that kind of state management issue? Like what do you think are the possible next steps or the right next steps if you already have an opinion on it?
Good question. All right. So with Cash RPC, I'm actually trying to make it so that we converge with whatever BitJason's kind of building. So that's a long-term intent. And I think with BitJason, his idea was, we have the state in the wallet, which we do want. My approach at the moment is kind of the inverse of that, where if you create a contract with a particular service, you're not going to have that state. Those are what you might call variables or wallet data or address data. You're not going to have that stored in your wallet. Instead, that's going to be stored by the service, and you're trusting that service to basically not lose that information, right? Which is pretty scary, I think. So long term, what we do want is basically the wallet to also, let's say I go to BCH.guru or something like that, and I go and create a Guru offer, and I'm using Wallet Connect, Cash RPC to do it. I don't just want BCH Guru to basically be the one that's storing that information, all the variables, all the data. I also want my wallet to be able to do it, right? And I think, not positive on this, but basically the aim is that in future, once we do end up with a stateful wallet, one that can basically recover those data variables and that kind of thing, that I should be able to save that even when I create a contract with BCH.guru. It should still save all that information to my wallet. And then let's say if BCH Guru happens to go down, happens to disappear or something like that, I can still complete that contract or settle that contract from my wallet itself, because the wallet itself will also have the variables and it will have the template, and I can just go in, hopefully, and basically click, BCH Guru, for whatever reason, did not settle this. I want to settle it myself. So that's kind of the example I'd give there is the wallet should be storing all this information, ideally. The difficulty of that is obviously recovery. At the moment, most wallets do use just a mnemonic, 12 words or 24 words or whatever, to restore itself. And from those 12 or 24 words, obviously you're not going to be able to get those variables. But I think there are some pretty feasible approaches to doing that. It's kind of going to be hard to explain, but we could use something like OrbitDB to basically store those variables encrypted with the user's private key and derive like a path when we actually create a wallet, like a dedicated OrbitDB BIP39 path, and be able to pull that information back from a decentralized, duplicated, replicated service like OrbitDB, and pull all those variables back into the wallets so that we can actually settle those contracts and things like that. So it's a bit of a hard thing to explain. I haven't really, resolved that yet. I've got some ideas that I'm kind of planning on toying with it, but for now, the first step is basically Cash RPC and Wallet Connect.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that answer. It's a very hard question to answer, and nobody has the correct answer, right? I think we agree that nobody's sure what the correct answer is because we're really kind of breaking new ground on what exactly do we want and how does this work and how can it work?
What's like from my point of view, I really hope we can keep it simple for the user. Like I'd love for the user to not have to remember anything except for the mnemonic,
right?
And that's it. So that would be my ideal situation. Other ideas have kind of been toyed with, like, we can store the variables in like an op return and that kind of thing. The problem with that is basically, I think op return has something like can't remember, maybe 200 bytes around there. And at that point, though you can store the variables, you're probably compromising privacy in storing stuff there. We can't use ECIES. I did try to play with that at one point. ECIES, for reference, is basically encryption using your Bitcoin Cash private key, to simplify it. And yeah, if we try and use ECIES to store variables and that kind of thing encrypted in op return, it's just not going to fit. So yeah, it's a difficult problem to solve. No one, I think, really knows exactly how we'll do it, but I do think there are approaches that should be pretty robust.
I had a thought about this some time back, and I think I've already shared it with you, but I'll just reiterate. So you can choose to store outside the blockchain, or you can choose to store on the blockchain. That are like two very clear distinctions. And on blockchain can become very problematic because if you store encrypted things, of course, that leaves someone up with unlimited time to try to break that encryption. But the thought I had was actually that when you engage with a contract or covenant on chain, you could actually have it return the parameterization of the contract as tokens, and you could store those tokens on a separate path, separate derivation path on that your wallet, when you recover from seed, will look at the separate derivation path, and for every address that has transactions, it simply just drives the next one in that chain until it has, like, okay, so here are all my parameters for all the contracts I'm part of, and then it goes to look at the actual money path to decide, like, where did I interact with contracts, and when it finds contracts, it correlates with those parameter tokens. It means you get a kind of pseudo privacy in the sense that the tokens are not sent directly to the same contracts. They are sent to another path of your derivation. So someone who's inspecting the blockchain, they will see, okay, there are parameters, but I don't know who used them. So yeah, that's one approach to maybe consider to see if it could be feasible.
I like that approach. There's a practical hesitation I have about it that I bumped into. It was actually when I was looking at the Guru contract. So there's certain information there that really does have to be hidden for their use case. And that's where we could end up with problems. I kind of like the fact that you're saying it would be obfuscated, right? Like it's in each, it's not all in the one cash token commitment. It's parameterized across different cash token commitments. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's a bad approach. I just worry that there might be something exceptional where we can't possibly risk exposure. That's where I get kind of nervous.
Yeah. Well, so I completely understand you when you're talking about secret, like storing a secret in a public space, no matter what protection mechanics you put on it, is never going to be the ideal solution. And
that's a different issue.
Just storing a secret in the first place, no matter what the storage medium is also not ideal, because secrets are only secrets until, you know, they end up on some place. So yeah, I don't have a good solution for that one. Like if you can recover from seed and that way can get your secret back, then the secret was available at some point to some
exactly. Yeah, it's a different issue.
But there are a bunch of contracts that doesn't like rely on client secrets, right? There's a lot of utility you can do that doesn't rely on hidden information. Those use cases might be better off having like just paying the blockchain, getting some tokens, and the wallet being able to present like all of the contracts and stuff with all the parameterizations based off of that, instead of having to find it from some other place.
One concern I'd have is just that we might end up with different standards. Like I don't think it's a bad approach. What I would love is if the whole ecosystem does converge on a single approach. So just from a development point of view, it's like because you might have, you know, in this case, store it in cash tokens. In this case, you know, store it elsewhere or something like that, which I think might confuse developers. At a previous job that I had, basically the whole product that we were kind of selling at that point was basically just to dumb stuff down and make it really, really easy for developers. And that's what I'd really ideally like to do for Bitcoin Cash as well. But again, I don't know whether that's a realistic thing from my end necessarily.
I think it's a good point though, right? That as we stated before, right? Or as I stated, we're pushing trust out towards the edges. And when it comes to a secret, whether a secret, like a serious secret that you really don't want people to know, at least for some period of time, there's going to be a trade-off for that. If you publish it publicly in some encrypted format, yeah, there's a trade-off, right? You can't recover a secret if it's a secret. There's going to be some trade-off, but we're still, whatever the solution is, it's still pushing things out to the edges so that you're not depending on someone else to determine the truth for you. And I appreciate that we're all working on, you know, solutions to get there where you're actually, like you said, Jim, self-sovereign. You're in control of your money and your identity, and whatever it is that we do to make things work, you're still 1,000x better than you are with just, oh, here, I'll send all of my data, secrets, etc., to some centralized service and hope that they do the right thing. It's definitely moving towards can't do evil and away from don't do evil.
Oh yeah, what was Google's slogan initially?
Don't do evil.
Don't do evil, and it's like, you know, they've become one of the most kind of sinister
organizations. They're in a position to do great evil, right? Whether they intend to or not. So yeah, like Jonathan and many people say, like can't do evil is much more powerful than don't do evil.
Yeah, exactly. I think,
so I appreciate that. It's getting closer to it. But yeah, thank you. So the original question was about where do we go from here where wallets are really on your side and have to be aware of things as opposed to just blindly querying the blockchain and being like, what's going on? Right? They can they have their own opinion about the state of your funds and the state of your smart contracts and coins and so forth. So yeah, nobody knows the right answer, but I think the way you described it is a good next step. We've got to just keep going, right? And keep trying.
Keep going and try to make it so that we can approach that step as well. So with Cash RPC, for example, I'm trying really hard to make it so that we'll be able to head that direction in future. I'm not sure if what I've got currently would be adequate for that, but I think it's definitely in the right direction towards that.
Right. Yeah, so I hope any developers who are listening or any users who are listening will encourage the wallets that you depend on to keep pushing, right? We're definitely not done. There's much more work to be done and to be figured out. So we got to keep pushing and trying to get out to those edges. Well, Jim, we've been talking for over an hour now, and I think this is a very valuable historical episode. I hope many people will listen to it and understand the state of Bitcoin Cash and permissionless money and how things are developing. Is there anything you wanted to talk about, to add on or to discuss before we wrap up?
Not really. Just I'll just try and set like expectations. So regarding the Cash RPC stuff, I should have like a working draft out by the end of this month. There'll be a lot of work still needed on it. It's all going to be basically version 0. So I don't want to set the expectation that this should be used in wallets yet. I'd really like to just collect feedback from people, get people to try it out, make sure that it can actually accommodate most contracts that would need it to. And also just play with the tooling that I provide and, see how that goes, make suggestions. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to add, I don't think.
Okay. And not only most contracts, right? But most transactions or all transactions, right? Like we want to support all transactions.
Yeah. There's some cool stuff, but I'll leave that until it's a very hard thing to explain. So, wait until I actually release the draft so that people can actually see it in practice. I think that'll work a lot better and be easier to kind of understand, what the design is.
Okay. And to give a shout out also to people who aren't on here today. So Pat, obviously, who's working on just pushing things ahead as well. And Matthew, the writer of the creator of Cashinize, that you were talking about integrating with or building on top of. But yeah, so Cashinize, this wallet that's kind of being used as a test bed for what's possible and what we can do next. So thanks to Matthew and Pat. Are there any others you want to give a shout out to who are doing work in the same space?
Definitely BitJason. I mean, that guy's he's a machine. And I constantly find new goodies in LibOff. So yeah, definitely him. He's
absolutely.
My whole implementation is at the moment less than 2,000 lines of code, like comments included, and that's because he's basically done most of the hard work already, kind of thing. So yeah,
fair. Yeah, absolutely. That's true. All right. Okay. Well, you name. Was there anything you wanted to bring up before we wrap up?
No, I enjoyed the session and just listening.
All right, Jonathan.
I'm good.
Nice. All right. Well, okay. Let's wrap up then. And Jim, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all this information. And I hope this is going to be useful for anybody, developer, historian, whoever it is who's listening, to understand the state of permissionless money today in 2023 November and where we're going to try to go from here. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. And yeah, thank you very much, everybody.
All right. And maybe next time we'll get to talk about having fun times with scammers.
Scammers, yeah.
Jim has some amazing stories about that, so we'll maybe tell those next time. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Take
right, thanks,
care,
everybody.
and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.